Netflix thought they were finally free of Meghan Markle. After investing millions into 2 underperforming seasons of With Love, Meghan executives were ready to cut ties and move on. The reshoots were wrapped, editors were pulling all-nighters to patch together the second season, and marketing budgets were already slashed. Internally, the message was simple: push it out, check the box, and never speak of it again. But just when they assumed the saga was over, the unexpected happened. While clearing out Meghan's private office, a space she had styled like a high-ranking showrunner, the IT team stumbled upon something they weren't prepared for. Hidden deep in her digital folders was a treasure trove of labeled audio files. These weren't production notes or voiceovers. They were raw, emotional rants, a secret diary of accusations, tirades, and personal takedowns aimed at some of Hollywood's most influential figures, including Netflix CEOs Ted Sarandos and Greg Peters. The first file they opened, titled Podcast, Cut Greg, exposed Meghan's fury. She accused Peters of sexism, control, and disrespect toward her creative vision. According to her, Netflix's leadership was riddled with misogynists, constantly undermining her ideas. But these recordings weren't just spontaneous venting, they were meticulously organized, with intros, outros, and timestamps. They were designed for a future podcast release, scheduled for 2026. The mood at Netflix shifted from irritation to panic. Among the files was a long rant about crucial scenes from Season 2, which Meghan claimed were deliberately cut. Scenes that included political cameos meant to send powerful messages, clips that would have embarrassed Donald Trump and highlighted progressive leadership in Hollywood, were scrubbed from the final edit. Netflix had caved to pressure, and Meghan was furious. Her monologues didn't stop there. Ted Sarandos was a frequent target. She accused him of two-faced behavior, publicly supportive but privately sabotaging her career. She alleged he personally signed off on decisions erasing her political cameos while quietly distancing Netflix from her brand. These weren't casual whispers. They were explosive statements strategically stored both digitally and physically on company property, raising serious legal concerns. Netflix scrambled. Legal teams convened emergency meetings, reviewing every piece of content she touched. Editors cross-checked footage, emails, work chats, and production memos for potential landmines. Meghan's actions weren't just emotional, they were calculated. Files like Netflix Boys Club, They Cut My Power, Fake Feminist, and Greg the Gatekeeper revealed a clear pattern, a methodical campaign ready to be unleashed once her contract ended. By the time the final weeks of production rolled around, chaos reigned. The show was stitched together by editors who barely knew her. Writers disengaged, meetings devolved into arguments, and Meghan continued recording. She wasn't simply documenting frustrations, she was building a media arsenal. Netflix. Executives watched in disbelief as the woman they had empowered appeared to weaponize every opportunity they had given her. And yet, Meghan remained calm. She knew exactly what she was doing. The recordings were her leverage, her insurance, and her next act. The storm had only just begun. As Netflix scrambled to contain the situation, Meghan remained several steps ahead. Every meeting, every email, every production decision had been cataloged, time-stamped, and stored. While executives debated how to respond, she was quietly hinting at her next move on private social media accounts. Blurred images of audio files, voice booths, and cryptic captions teased a coming storm. The truth always comes out. The followers didn't fully understand, but inside Netflix, panic was palpable. Legal teams warned that any misstep could open the company to public scandal. Meanwhile, Meghan's files weren't mere complaints. They were strategic strikes. Each segment was targeted, each title carefully chosen. Netflix Boys Club, They Cut My Power, Fake Feminist, Greg the Gatekeeper. These weren't random rants, they were calculated episodes, ready to be launched like a full-blown podcast series. The audacity was almost shocking. She had turned her personal grievances into a weapon, and she wasn't holding back. Inside the studio, editors pored over Season 2, cross-referencing memos with deleted scenes. One clip featured Meghan attempting to include a political cameo of Kamala Harris and Gavin Newsom at a dinner scene. She argued it symbolized the progressive unity Hollywood needed to showcase, but directors and writers pushed back. To them, it didn't fit the tone. The show was romantic and light, not political theater. Meghan didn't accept their reasoning. Her messages became increasingly hostile. She accused staff of silencing her, of fearing cultural risks, and resenting her presence as a powerful woman of color. Tensions escalated. Writers stopped replying. Meetings descended into arguments, and the rotating team of editors struggled to maintain cohesion. The show had become a chaotic patchwork, with Meghan's voice lingering in every recording. She wasn't just documenting, she was orchestrating the chaos, ensuring that every slight, every edit, and every cut became potential fuel for her upcoming podcast. The breaking point came when a senior executive discovered a file titled TED, Sarandos Betrayal. Meghan had recorded herself detailing how the CEO personally approved erasures of her politically charged scenes while presenting a friendly public front. The implications were explosive. If released, this could tarnish Netflix's reputation, ignite media scrutiny, and fuel conversations about misogyny and censorship in Hollywood. Meanwhile, Meghan continued to hint at her audience. Private Instagram. Stories teased clips with captions like, "They thought they could silence me. They were wrong." The internal PR teams at Netflix were in overdrive, attempting to suppress any leaks, crafting contingency plans for an eventual media storm. Yet there was a nagging sense. They were already too late. Meghan had control. And then came the final, most audacious act. In one file, simply titled The Reveal, Meghan outlined her plan for the podcast launch. A precise schedule, time to follow the quiet release of With Love, Meghan Season 2, ensuring maximum curiosity and shock. It wasn't just a warning, it was a declaration. Netflix had underestimated her, and now the power dynamics had shifted. By the end of the week, executives realized that this wasn't just about a show or a contract. This was a battle for narrative control, for public perception, for Hollywood influence. And Meghan had the first move, fully prepared. As the day ended, one junior IT employee stumbled upon a folder that hadn't been cataloged, a series of encrypted files labeled only by dates. The title on the first file sent chills down their spine. Everything they thought was safe isn't. At that moment, no one in Netflix could predict what would happen next. Meghan wasn't just planning a podcast, she was engineering a media storm. While Netflix quietly buried With Love, Meghan Season 2, she meticulously laid out every episode of her upcoming show Hollywood Unmasked. Each audio clip was a calculated reveal, designed to expose executives, writers, and directors who had tried to control her vision. She knew exactly which scenes to highlight, which voices to air, and which moments to frame as proof of censorship and betrayal. Inside Netflix, the panic deepened. Legal teams combed through contracts looking for loopholes, but everything Meghan had recorded was technically hers. Digital backups, encrypted folders, and physical copies ensured she had leverage no one could touch. PR executives whispered about the inevitability of the fallout, but no strategy could undo what she had already built. Meghan's teasers were subtle but electric. Private Instagram stories showed blurred studio setups, her voice behind a microphone, and captions dripping with suspense. "They silenced me. Now it's time they listen." Her followers buzzed, unaware of the full scale, but inside Netflix, alarms blared. The files labeled Ted Sarandos Betrayal and Netflix Boys Club were particularly explosive, hinting at sexism, manipulation, and power plays at the highest level. And just when the executives thought they could anticipate her next move, Meghan dropped a final twist. She had already pitched Hollywood Unmasked to several independent media outlets and podcast platforms. Distribution deals were quietly in motion, timed perfectly to ride the residual attention of Season 2. The stakes couldn't have been higher. Netflix had power on paper, but Meghan had control where it mattered most: public perception, virality, and the story itself. And as the final encrypted folder popped up on a junior IT employee's screen, its label read simply, "The Endgame." No one at Netflix knew what the next move would be, but one thing was certain: the real show was about to begin. Netflix had no choice but to brace for impact. Meghan's podcast, Hollywood Unmasked, dropped weeks after the quiet release of Season 2, unleashing her carefully curated rants on a global audience. Headlines exploded. Social media buzzed. Executives who once dismissed her were now scrambling for damage control. Meghan had turned suppression into power, silence into virality, and frustration into a full-blown movement. Her final message was clear. She wasn't just surviving Hollywood, she was rewriting the rules. Stay tuned, because this isn't the end. The next chapter? Only Meghan knows, and the world will be watching.